Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the session of Demystifying AI and sort of cutting through all the hype. So thank you guys for making time and coming into the stage and spending 15 minutes with me. Many of you tweeted me and messaged me that you were interested in this session, so very nice to see you here. With that, I'd like to get started. AI is something I find really fascinating. I spend quite a bit of my time talking about how industries can actually use AI in relatively new ways. And I like to start with the fact that in my world, customers are now have much greater expectations of what they want to get from brands. And we started with a time when we were very reactive to what customers would say to us. So if they called us, or they emailed us, or for those of you who remember fax machines, they would fax us, or they would show up to our office or to our small storefront. And we were very reactive to the way in which we engaged with customers. And that may happen thousands of times. Whether you're a small business or very large, it was something that you felt you could manage. And then we started moving to something that we would call proactive, proactively reaching out to customers and letting them know things that maybe they didn't know about our products and services, or even better yet, being proactive and anticipating what they may need from businesses. And so we moved to this proactive based on these streams of data that we would capture in CRM systems, as well as support and help desk systems, and many other ways we would try to stay ahead of what customers would need from us. And now we've moved to being much more predictive. And what I mean by predictive is we want to ensure that we are where our customers are when they show up. So we want to make sure that we are anticipating where we think they're going to be. So as an example, if your customers now want to do support with you via WhatsApp, or they want to do support with you via Facebook Messenger, or they want to do it via Twitter, or they want to do it via Facebook, or they want to do it via email, you want to make sure that your brand is there. And this is also shifting, more importantly, because at the end of the day, while this slide says customer expectations have changed, I'd like to challenge you to realize that the customer themselves is actually different. We now have a time where things are going to proactively request support from a brand, according to Gartner. And if 6 billion things are reaching out and saying, I need help, who answers them? Is it other things? Is it bots? Is it robots? Is it AI? Is it machine learning? What is going to respond to these things when they reach out to your brand at this kind of volume? Remember, this isn't us reaching out. This is the machine or the thing reaching out to us. So how will you turn billions of events into these predictive interactions which improve this customer experience? More importantly, remember, if the customer is now a thing, and the thing reaches out for support because it's not working or it's about to stop working, you definitely want to make sure that you're responding in the appropriate amount of time so that the thing is not down, offline, no longer working in a production a capacity if it's in a supply chain or a manufacturing plant. And so you have to make sure that this customer experience, even for things, is captured. So I like to say that with all this generation of data that's happening with things, I've heard many people say that data is the new oil, and that, that is where companies are going to compete. I'd like to give you another lens of that. I'd like to say to you that for me, data is the oil, but analytics is the refinery. You have to refine that data to look for the intelligence, which is the petrol or the gasoline that will power the business, propel the business forward as you're looking for growth. So all these things are generating all these data sources. They're reaching out. You're trying to be predictive. You have to analyze that data, and then you have to use that data. Just capturing data for data's sake does no business any good. And it can be overwhelming, too, by the way, if you have multiple data sources. So you want to make sure from an intelligence standpoint, you have to use the analytics to get yourself to that artificial intelligence that then can power the business. So high-performing business units. I wanted to call out with you that the fact that now people are finally starting to pivot and understand that intelligence is actually this competitive weapon. If you can take all this data, if you can refine it, and now you use this intelligence to go after a different set of customers, potentially a different market set, you're adding new features and functionalities to products. If you're a startup, you know where to focus your business. So sales teams that are using analytics, especially small startups that have only a few salespeople, you have to be smarter with your time. So using these intelligent tools, analytics, data, as well as predictive, allows you to take small teams and make them seem much larger than they are. You also have the same opportunity in services. Your customer service organizations sometimes will take some of the most important calls you're ever going to make. Because a customer calls in when they have a problem. And the way your team responds to those problems has long-lasting implications to the way in which customers view your brand. And so people are starting to say, look, analytics, intelligence, big data, IoT, things, machine learning, I understand it, but how do I execute it at the field level? What can I do tomorrow or Monday morning in order to make my business more successful? This is where it happens, where artificial intelligence can make your sales team, your service team, and your marketing team much more effective. The way that they're doing that is using tools for things like sales velocity, helping the sales team speed up the deals that you have in the pipeline, improving close rates, focusing on the deals that are actually the most likely to close, not just the deals that you have in this very large funnel. Not all deals are created the same. The next would be time spent per lead. Salespeople may be chasing the wrong deals because a lead is a lead is a lead. Unless you start to look at the data, look at the intelligence, and say, is this the right lead? Does this customer look like the right customer for us based on the things that we know we win when we do? And the next is providing this very consistent level of support and this consistent customer experience. Those high-performing teams on the right, you can see, are much more likely to do those things and see improvement when they use analytics in real-world environments, especially when it comes to growing a business. That's the best way to show ROI is in the sales arena, because you know if you start doing things and you start to see sales increase, both from a pipeline and velocity, the size of a deal, the length of time that a salesperson works on that deal, you know you've got really good ROI on that. But also in marketing. Digital marketing is a topic that has been very hot for the last 5 or 6 years. In my previous role at Gartner, I was actually part of the team that came up with the prediction that said that marketers were going to spend more than the CIOs. And that sort of sent off this flurry of these acquisitions by big tech companies, including SalesForce, looking at ways in which we can position technology to help marketers be smarter so that downstream in that funnel across service and sales, that you have more information. But if marketing is capturing information and not sharing it with sales, and if marketing and sales has information and they're not sharing it with the service organization, you've got all this data, all this rich intelligence, all this competitive brand insight, and you're not using it to your advantage. If you think about what makes companies successful, a lot of it now is how do you scale this personalization? How do I make you feel like you're the only person in this room listening to my presentation? How do I make you feel like you're my only customer when you call in? How do I make you feel like I understand the pains of your business? Very difficult to do at scale. As a small business who starts to get just past their startup phase, this is one of the hardest things to do. You used to know all your customers, and the day you no longer know your customers, you know you've gotten bigger. Because as a small business, you know them all. And you know that you have these one-to-one relationships. But being able to scale that without technology, without analytics, without intelligence is almost impossible. So the future is here. For me, the future is here. Having carried a sales bag for almost 15 years, I like to call myself a recovering seller. While I no longer carry a quota, I feel like I still bleed the blood of a salesperson and fight the fight from a quota achievement standpoint. And I know it's really tough. But the future being here, for sure, is not evenly distributed. Some companies now are really doubling down on analytics and AI, and others are not. And so now that we can get AI democratized into a much more mass usage because of the advancements around technology and cloud and other things, you now have the ability to say everybody has the same tool set that they can use. So the old way of thinking was companies struggle to unite data. The new way is having a single view of the customer. If you're a startup and you can make one decision out of my presentation, it would be this one. Because if you make these decisions right as you're starting on your journey, you don't have to go back in time and fix them. Many of the very large companies in the globe, I don't care what industry, are struggling with having to fix decisions that they made decades ago with all these disparate data sets. So make the right decisions early. Next is analyzing data was backward looking. What happened in the past? What did we sell yesterday? How many calls did we get yesterday? And now it's trying to say, wait a second, that should give us some insight, but what is forward looking? What are the things that we know we can gain from trying to find patterns in the data we have so we can be much more predictive about the future? AI being for techies, right? It only sitting in the IT organization or with the CIO or the database administrator, the network administrator, right? It was always the technology people or resources that were talking about AI. And now it's AI for everyone. And we can use a lot of these tools right in our hands on our smartphones. And Asia Pacific as a region has drastically outpaced other parts of the world on these adoption rates around these kinds of technologies, especially as it relates to the smartphone. And the product is the product. So for the startups in the room, I know you love your technology and you love your company and you think that your product is the best thing out there. But more often than not, the experience is becoming the product. And so you can have a good enough product with a fantastic experience and beat a better product with an average experience. So while I know you spend a lot of time on the quality and all of the things that go into your product, all very important, but if you miss the side of it that is experience-based, you'll miss that opportunity to really connect with your customers. So in the future for me, customer-driven organizations, right? The ones that put their customers first, the ones that think about data and analytics and intelligence in new ways, use experience as a competitive weapon. They will reset the value for these meaningful relationships between the customer and your brand. Your greatest sales force ever is always going to be your customers advocating on your behalf. How many of you use WhatsApp in the room? And how many of you got called on by WhatsApp to use the product? I mean, did some sales rep call you and say, hey, use WhatsApp? No, some friend told you to use WhatsApp. That's what I mean by this power of this advocacy in the marketplace. So let your customers tell your story by giving them really compelling experiences. So with that, I thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of the RISE conference. It's been a pleasure being here with you today, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.